The most recent UniFi network application finally adds support for custom NAT rules, a long overdue feature for UniFi gateways. In UniFi network controller, if we go to the routing, we can find a new tab called NAT. And there are 3 types of NAT rules you can configure. I'm going to have separate videos for each of them. This video is about destination NAT. This is the article on Wikipedia about NAT, or Network Address Translation. It's a method to map an IP address to another one while the packet is in transit across a routing device. And the modification is in the IP header of a packet. In fact, we are using NAT every day. For example, your home network may only have one public IP address from your ISP, but you have many devices inside your home network. They can all access internet. How it is achieved? Through NAT. And in this video, we will be focusing on DNAT. It's for transparently changing the destination IP address of a packet and then perform the inverse function for any replies. It's very possible you heard of port forwarding. In fact, that's just a very common application of DNAT. So in this video, we will talk about how we can achieve the effect of port forwarding. You may know this feature, port forwarding, already existed in UniFi gateways long before. In fact, internally, it's achieved by using DNAT. So we will see how the original port forwarding works. Then we will compare if we use the new DNAT feature in UniFi gateway, whether we can achieve the same thing. First, let's look into the traditional port forwarding implementation. I run the UniFi gateway in a lab environment, and this gateway is behind another router for my home network. So even though here in the upper part of the diagram, you see this green area is for WAN, right? In fact, it's just in the WAN part, right? So it's not really internet, but it doesn't matter. It works the same way as a internet device. And then the lower part, the light blue area, is the LAN part. Okay, so you can see in the WAN part, I have 2 client machines. For the first machine, I wanted to access this first web server if it tries to visit the WAN IP address of the UniFi gateway. And for the second client, instead, I wanted to visit the right side Linux web server if it visits the same WAN IP address. Basically, what I'm trying to achieve is, first, I want to allow the users on the internet to initiate traffic to access my internal servers with a public IP address. The second goal is for different web client from the internet, I want them to be able to access different internal servers. Let's see whether we can do that by using the traditional port forwarding in UniFi gateway. In the UniFi network controller, if I go to settings, go to security, you can find the port forwarding tab. I already defined 2 port forwarding rules. So for the first one, the very first setting is a checkbox. UniFi gave it a very confusing label, forward rule. Basically, this checkbox is just enable or disable this rule. Then the second part, the interface, is important. So here you need to indicate which WAN part. Because I'm using UXG Pro, it has 2 WAN port. I need to select either of them or both. Here I'm using my primary WAN port. And you can see from the diagram, I have the IP address noted here. Okay, the from part meaning the client machines, because as I mentioned, the second goal for my testing is to achieve the effect that different web clients, when they access the same one IP address, it will be able to access different internal web servers. That's why here for the from setting, I don't select the default NA. Instead, I select limited. Then I need to specify the source. So for the first rule, the source is the IP address for the web client 1. Okay, and the part is not the part used by this web client when it initiates the connection. No, the part in fact is the part for the target, because we are talking about web server, so the port number is 80. So the 80 is here, the target. So then it's the most important setting, forward IP. Because we are doing a port forwarding, you need to define the final destination's IP address. For my first rule, I want this client to visit the left side server. That's why here for the forward IP, I need to give it the first web server's IP address, and then the forward part, because we are talking about a HTTP server, so it's 80, and then protocol is TCP. If you choose the drop down, you can see it's very limited, TCP or UDP or both. So this is the simple port forwarding setting. And for the second one, it's very similar. It's just for the right side, this green rule. So now we have two port forwarding rules defined. So you may wonder, okay, you have the rules, but internally inside the UniFi gateway, how the two port forwarding rules are implemented. Let's SSH into the UniFi gateway. I'm in. Then let me run the command IP tables. I'm only interested in the NAT table, and I want to list its details. So you can see a lot of rules are already inside the IP tables. Two of them, they are corresponding to the two port forwarding rules we just defined. So let's see the first one, the target DNAT. That's our focus for this video. Now you already know the pre-existing port forwarding feature. In fact, internally, it's nothing but a DNAT rule, and it's TCP, the source as we defined. Let me click on the first rule. See, the source is this one, and then the destination. We are not specifying destination. Instead, here we specify the interface, right? But here you don't see the interface. It's because the default display doesn't display the interface, but we can add a parameter to display the more detailed information. See, now we have several new columns. The in and out column, they are for the interfaces. And you can see here the way Ubiquiti generate the port forwarding rule by using DNAT is it doesn't restrict the in interface at all. Then you may ask, okay, here on the UI, we specify the one part as the interface. Where is the one part, right? Be patient. We will be there very soon. We just talked about the source. We know where it comes from. The destination, we didn't specify it. Okay, see here, we have the match set. See, it match what? It match destination. Only if your destination meets the condition of this set, this rule will be applied. We can display what's this set. By the way, just by reading the name, you may already be able to guess it is for the primary one part, right? But let's just make sure that's the case. Let me display this IP set. It simply include two subsets. Then let me drill down to this particular one for IPv4. Now we got this IP address. And if you compare what I noted down in the diagram, you can see this IP address is the primary one part's IP address. Now it's very clear. Yes, on the UI, we specify the interface here, but internally, Ubiquiti implement our selection as a IP set instead of the in interface. So that's interesting, but that's understandable. Then let's continue reading. The protocol need to be TCP, just like what we specified on the UI. DPT stands for destination part, which is HTTP or 80 in our case. This part corresponds to the forward IP and the part we specified on the UI. See here, the 2 is this one, exactly as what we specified, right? And for the second line is for the second port forwarding rule. Okay, now we see how they are defined in the backend. Let's see how it works in backend. So to show you how it works, in the lower right part of the screen, you can see two Mac machines, right? They correspond to the two clients I show you in the diagram. In the two clients, I already launched browsers and entered the IP address, but I haven't hit enter key yet. Before that, let me launch the TCP dump inside the UniFi gateway. Let's see how the traffic is routed. So let me run TCP dump. For interface, I want to show NA, and for port, I'm only interested in port 80. Okay, started. Then in the first client, let me hit enter. Okay, something happened, and then in the right side, hit enter. Okay, a lot of things are captured. Let me stop capturing. Let's first look at the two clients. As you can see, they are visiting the same IP address, the one part of the UniFi gateway, right? But you can see they are displaying the totally different results. Why? Because the left one is showing the content for the left side Linux server, and the right side client is showing the second web server's content. That's exactly what we want to achieve. And then let's see what's captured. See, for the first half part, you can see this .2.120 machine, which is the left side web client, is trying to visit the one part, and then see the interface is at 0, which means the one part, the primary one part. And then the second line is for the VLAN 10, and then it's out. So which means internally inside the gateway routed the traffic to VLAN 10, and the source is 120 again, but this time the destination is not the primary one part IP address anymore. Instead, it is the IP address for the left side Linux machine. How it happens? Because of our port forwarding rule. Continue looking. This one, it's for VLAN 10, it's in, and this time it's the reply from the web server to the WAN client. The next one is interface primary one part, and then it's out, and the source is from the one part IP address, and the destination is the left side Apple client. So in this way, even though the one client is only visiting the IP address of the gateway internally, it's in fact visiting the internal web server. Okay, this is for the left side, the blue link, right? And in the exact same way, but just by using the second port forwarding rule, you can see starting from this line, we have the traffic very similar to the one we already examined, but this time it's for the green one, it's visiting the second internal web servers instead of the first one. Okay, you can see how the port forwarding works from the client perspective and from the technical internal gateway perspective. You also see we achieved the two different routings just because we have two different port forwarding rules applied to two different WAN clients. Okay, now let's move on to see whether we can achieve the same thing by using the new DNAT feature. You can see for DNAT, I want to achieve the exact same effects as the port forwarding rules, but I want to use the new DNAT feature on the UniFi network controller. Before I make any new DNAT rules, I need to disable the two existing port forwarding rules. Let me go to the two rules, just uncheck the first checkbox to disable them. Okay, done. Now if I go to routing, go to NAT, then choose the destination. As you can see, I already have the two DNAT rules created, but let me enable them. Resume, done. So let's examine what I defined. For the first DNAT rule, for protocol, if you click the drop down, instead of just TCP and UDP, you can see several other protocols, right? That's the difference if you compare to port forwarding rule. And for interface, instead of just first one, second one, now you have the whole selection for the VLANs you defined. That's another difference. For DNAT rules, it also have different terms for the same thing if you compare to port forwarding rule. For example, here for the one port IP address in the DNAT rule is called destination. That's the D in the DNAT rule. The destination for this case is the primary one port's IP address. And then the destination port is 80. And then the source is the same way as in port forwarding rule. It's referring to the WAN clients. And then I don't want to specify the source part because that's different every time when the web client want to visit a server, right? So I don't want to limit anything here. See here, it has some new terms. For the forward IP address in IP forward rule, here in DNAT rule, it's called translated IP address, but it's referring to the same destination server and the port 80. That's it. So it's very similar to the existing port forwarding rule, but apparently much more flexible. You have more options. And then for the second DNAT rule, similar way, but it's for the green route. Okay, I already enabled these two DNAT rules. Go to the SSH session to the UniFi gateway. Let's see difference when it comes to the IP table DNAT rules. The upper part is what we displayed for the previous port forwarding rules, just for comparison purpose. I will leave it here. In the lower part, let me run the same command. IP tables to display NAT table, display the details, and I only want to show the DNAT rules. Okay, you can see it's not exactly the same as the port forwarding rule. Of course, it's also DNAT, also for TCP, but this time for the DNAT rule, the interface, the in interface is at 0, not like the port forwarding is NA, right? And remember in port forwarding rule how we restrict the one part by using the match set here, right? But if you check the DNAT rule, there's no match set. Internally, we have different implementations for the same goal, even though they are both DNAT rule, but the implementation is different. For the source IP address, the same thing. And the destination, see here, in the port forwarding rule, is anywhere, but in the DNAT rule, it's the primary one port's IP address. When it comes to the translate, it's the same thing if you compare the port forwarding rule and the DNAT rule, right? So even though it's not exactly the same, but it will achieve the same goal. So we can validate it in the left side client. Let me refresh. Yeah, the same result. And in the right side, refresh, the same result. You can see we achieved the exact same goal, but previously by using port forwarding rule, this time by using the DNAT rule. Okay, this is the end of the video. Thanks for watching.